What's up everyone? Welcome to a brand new kind of video that I'm going to be doing occasionally as I play through a whole bunch of games on my channel. So I started this channel in May and I've played several games since then. So in order to review and discuss them, I came up with an idea to have my Patreon individuals rate what playthroughs they felt like were their favorite. So I had them rate the playthroughs from their most favorite to their least favorite. And before I looked at their numbers, I went through and rated my playthroughs from my most favorite to my least favorite games. And so I'm going to be discussing that, and we're going to be comparing the numbers and looking to see, how am I feeling about the games? How are my Patreon people feeling about the games? And then in the comments, you let me know how you've felt about the playthroughs. If you're new here for the first time, I just want to say welcome. Be sure to check out my description box. There's so much information down there. Information about giveaway, about Patreon, about Discord, about Instagram. Just so many cool things in the description, so make sure you check that out. A like on this video would be super helpful, and let's go. Alright, so let's first start off by just listing the games that I've played through on my channel so far. Any of these games can be found on my channel. They're all organized in series from when I played them. So if there's anything that you're hearing here for the first time that I've played that you're interested in, you can check them out on my channel. So starting with Resident Evil 3 Remake, then I moved to Resident Evil 2 Remake, The Walking Dead Season 1, A Plague Tale Innocence, Until Dawn, Tell Me Why, and Life is Strange. Those are the games that I've played so far on my channel, and now we're going to rank them. The way we're going to do this is I'm going to rank from my least favorite to my most favorite, and then on your screen, you're going to see the Patreon rankings as well. Keep in mind that I enjoyed all of these games. Every single game on here I find absolutely fantastic. There's no game that I've played that I didn't enjoy. So I want to make that clear because I am going to be ranking them, and there's going to be a least favorite, but I really enjoyed all of these games. Coming in at number 7 is Resident Evil 2 Remake. People are probably like, what? You picked this as your least favorite playthrough so far when you played Resident Evil 3? I still really loved Resident Evil 2. I felt like the puzzles were really fun and really challenging. I liked that I got to play as two separate characters and get to know the story from both sides of the story. I really liked the inventory management. I liked the level design. I liked so much about that game. The only thing I felt was lacking was dialogue because the character was by themselves the whole game. But I mean, it's still a really good game. As I said before, it's so hard to rank these because they are such wonderful games. But coming in, my least favorite of the games I've played so far is Resident Evil 2 Remake. So Patreon rated Resident Evil 2 Remake as a number 4 and a number 6 playthrough. So it was, not... Alright, going up closer to number 1 is going to be Resident Evil 3 Remake. I picked that one above Resident Evil 2 because it was more action-packed. I really liked the gun mechanics more in Resident Evil 3. I liked the weapon choices. I love Nemesis. I can't stand Mr. X. I mean, he's not a bad character. It's just, I liked Nemesis more. And I liked Jill Valentine a whole lot. And the games aren't that much different. You're still in Raccoon City fighting an absolutely horrible pandemic. But I felt like Resident Evil 3 played to my player style a lot more. So, next, coming in at number 6 is Resident Evil 3 Remake. Patreon gave Resident Evil 3 Remake a number 5 and a number 7. So, again, not too far away from my choices as well. Alright, still working our way up towards number 1. Coming in at number 5 for me is going to be Until Dawn. I loved this playthrough. Listen, I didn't think a game could make me scream like Until Dawn. If you haven't watched that playthrough of mine, go check it out on my channel if you want to see someone absolutely horrified. And that's actually why I'm putting it at number 5 and not closer to number 1, because I don't mind horror, but that game really scared me. So it was really enjoyable though. I loved the story. I really loved the characters. I loved the campy horror feel that it had going on and the horror tropes that it played on. I really loved that. I loved the mystery. I just loved so much about that game that it's not coming in at number last. It's not coming in last, but I just felt like the other games I played ranked a little bit higher for me because that game truly scared me. I'm going to be playing Man of Medan soon and Little Hope, so we'll see how those rank up against Until Dawn. But Until Dawn is just iconic. You have to play it. It was my first true horror game. I know people say Resident Evil is horror, but you don't know horror until you play Until Dawn. Games that Patreon really liked Until Dawn, though, they rated it a number 3 and a number 2. So glad you guys enjoyed that. I enjoyed it as well. All right, coming in at number 4 for me is A Plague Tale: Innocence. This game really took me by surprise. I didn't realize it was going to combine so many different gameplay elements. I loved the story. The atmosphere they created was so fun and so engaging. It was also a very heartbreaking story, but I loved how they threw alchemy in there. I loved how, like, the puzzles were fun. Some were really hard. There was one that was, like, frustratingly hard. If you've played the game, hopefully you have. I don't want to spoil anything, but the puzzle that was really hard is in the castle, trying to navigate all those lights and stuff. That one was a little bit frustrating, but beyond that, the puzzles were really fun, and the game, like, was really fun to think about, like, try to figure out what I needed to do and how I was going to approach the next obstacle. I loved the alchemy. I loved the different weapons. I loved the characters. Hugo, I loved their bond getting developed over time, and just the side characters we met along the way were really fun and interesting. I just felt like it was a really heartwarming story, and the gameplay was just so fun. The slingshot, you can't beat it. It's the first game I've ever played that has a slingshot in it, and I enjoyed every second of it. So combined with the gameplay, the story, the characters, it's pretty high up there on the list for me. I mean, 4, we're getting even closer to 1 here. I loved that game, and I really hope they make a second one. I know there's a second one in the works, but I'm not sure when it's going to be. They definitely left the ending open-ended. If you haven't played it, I won't spoil it. I'm trying not to spoil any of these games, but they made the ending open-ended, and I really hope they make a second one. The ending boss fight in A Plague Tale: Innocence was better than the ones in Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 for me. Now, granted, those boss fights at the end of those games were amazing too, but like, nothing really compares to the boss fight you have to fight at the end of A Plague Tale: Innocence. It took me many tries personally, but I also found it really fun, and I liked how they tied it into the story. I really enjoyed A Plague Tale: Innocence, so it's gonna be my number 4 pick. All right, you ready for the Patreon ratings for A Plague Tale: Innocence? They also ranked it 4. We got 2 4s. So this is the one game that myself and Patreon agreed on that it ranks in at number 4. And I think that's really cool that we have one that's all the same. We're inching closer to that number 1 spot, but coming in at number 3 for me is The Walking Dead Season 1. The Walking Dead Season 1 is just such a spectacular game. The storytelling in it is so creative. Like, every episode within the season, I was just like, wow, how did you guys come up with this? Like, I'm trying to make this a spoiler-free thing, but just all the different things and plot lines that they came up with, character dynamics and relationships, that game was just amazing. It also holds a special place in my heart because it's the first story-based game that I have ever played and completed. It's also my first 100% completion of a game. So I think that game just holds a special place in my heart, and I really loved the story and the gameplay, and I'm currently playing Season 2 on my channel too, so you can stay tuned and check that out if you like The Walking Dead. This is the one I probably differed the most on with my Patreon individuals. They ranked it at a number 5 and a number 6. I gave it a number 3. I just think that's so interesting. Obviously, we all agree that all these games have been so much fun, but they ranked it a 6, and I ranked it a 3. All right, now we're getting really close to that number 1 spot. So the 2 games that are left are Life is Strange and Tell Me Why. Both are Don't Nod games. Both are wonderful stories, wonderful characters. Loved both games so much. When thinking about these, it was really hard to try to pick between putting it as number 1 or number 2. But for number 2, I picked Life is Strange. It was so hard though. If I could tie for number 1, I would make them both number 1. But I was trying to truly rank these the best that I could. So I did choose Life is Strange as number 2. But that game was life-changing for me, and I truly mean it. I will never forget that game, and I'm sure I will play through it multiple times. Life is Strange throws so many things at you as far as story development and plot. There's mystery, there's intrigue, there's like superhero type of stuff, there's like love and romance, like a faint hint of it, and it's just such a wonderful game, and you don't know what you're getting yourself into when you start the game. Like, you think it's just going to be this calm, relaxing story, and whereas that is part of the plot, you're in for an awakening. At least I was. Again, I don't want to spoil the game. If you haven't played it, please go play it. I was really late to the game. So hopefully you have played it too. But talk about plot twists. Oh my gosh. And just like gut wrenching and heartwarming story. Life is Strange is an absolutely brilliant game. And I wish I had the vocabulary to give it what it deserves. But the rewind mechanic is really fun. The puzzles were not too challenging. They were really engaging. The music and the soundtrack is absolutely wonderful. I was fortunate enough to get my hands on a physical copy of the CD, and just such a wonderful game. So I ranked it number 2. Patreon both ranked it as their number 1 picks of playthroughs so far. Patreon ranked Life is Strange as their number 1 playthrough so far. I can't wait to see how these things change if they do it all over time. Like I said, I'm going to be doing these throughout my series on YouTube, so stay tuned for those. Now it's time. The time has finally come for my number 1 pick. It's no surprise as I just talked about it, but my number 1 pick is Tell Me Why. I just loved everything about this game. It represented something inside of me that I feel like a game has never represented before, and they did it accurately. I feel like the storytelling was brilliant. The small puzzles were fun. The character development, the character development was so good. The relationships between the twins and figuring out, again, I don't want to spoil it because Tell Me Why just came out, but there's a big plot point that you need to figure out, and their journey to do that and get closure in their lives is just so wonderful. And yeah, it's my number 1 game, my number 1 playthrough, and right now it's actually my favorite game of all time. Right below that is Life is Strange. Those 2 games, don't nod, you guys are freaking amazing. Not that any of you are probably going to see this, but if you happen to, you guys are amazing. Don't Nod makes life-changing games, at least for me, and I know a lot of people out there feel the same way. So the collectibles are really fun to find too, and Tell Me Why. I still have 2 to find, but I just loved everything about that game, so it's my number 1 playthrough. Patreon rated Tell Me Why a number 2 and a number 3, so we weren't that far off at all. This has been a really amazing journey, and I've loved doing YouTube. Thank you guys so much for coming and watching my playthroughs and, spending time with me and talking about the games in the comments and just being excited with me. I can't tell you guys how much that means and how it's changed, me as a person and gaming. I appreciate it so much, and I can't wait for many more games with you guys. Come join us on Patreon so you can be part of these videos and you can pick what games I play next. I let Patreon pick those, except for new releases. I'll always try to play new releases, and then whatever Patreon picks as well. I appreciate you guys so much. I will see you in the next video.